Nungamalari, a lot of you are asking me if it's okay for you to call me auntie, given you're Anglo-European. Yes, of course it is. It's a term of respect and endearment, and many of us Aboriginal people, we love to be recognised in that way. So by all means, you're welcome to call me auntie, of course.
Welcome to the TikTok influencers you really should know about, the podcast dedicated to showcasing the remarkable individuals on TikTok who are making a genuine impact beyond just their good looks and celebrity status. From advocates for social justice to comedians who brighten our days, this podcast celebrates the diverse talents that make TikTok a vibrant community. Tune in to discover the influencers you may not have heard of yet, but you definitely should know about. Welcome back to the TikTok influencers you really should know about. And today I am very excited about today's show because I've been waiting anxiously and yet patiently at the same time for my two guests to come on today. The TikTok channel is called Ask Auntie and Ask an Ally. And I think that after today's episode, you're going to want to rush to their TikTok channel and check it out. My guests are Carla Rogers, a Churchill Fellowship recipient and a dedicated Indigenous ally who founded Evolve Communities back in 2005, and Aunty Munya Andrews, who is an Aboriginal elder from the Kimberley region of Western Australia. She is also the co-director of Evolve Communities. She is also an author of several books, and I was really tickled to find out that she is also a barrister. For those that are not, for those American folks, that's an attorney. So welcome to the show, both Carla and Aunty Munya.
Nungamalari, Christine.
Hi,
That's
Christine.
fantastic.
Good to be here.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say, because I was practicing Nunga Manladi.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's hello and body. Yeah.
It's so beautiful because you start your TikTok videos, a lot of them you start with that.
Yeah.
So beautiful. It's such a wonderful way to be received as someone who's watching. So
Yeah.
I want you to know I appreciate that. And I tried. I hope I didn't do it injustice, but I hope I did okay. So, TikTok. Did you ever think that you would?
Yeah.
Did you both ever think that you would be on the platform of TikTok?
Well,
Heavens,
I can tell you
no.
a funny story about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
If you like. So, yes, the team were encouraging us to, but we were a bit resistant because we were pretty busy with the other social platform.
Yeah.
And we thought it was for young people, at the time, which has turned out to also be a good thing. But then we went to a conference in Sydney. It was actually with a professional institutes conference. And they asked us if we had anything exciting coming up. And I stood in front of several hundred people and announced that we were launching on Tinder.
On Tinder. Tinder.
So that's how savvy I was, Christine.
Oh, I love it.
I did mean TikTok.
She did. Yeah.
But yeah, no, we didn't. But it's just been incredible, hasn't it, Auntie?
Yeah, it has been great. Yeah. But I also have the distinction of being banned from TikTok.
Ooh, what did you do?
And I thought, oh my goodness, such a rebel. You know, being a barrister, you're a fit and proper person. And so, like, oh my God, they're seeing me as a rebel of some sort. And anyway, there was just some misunderstanding, I think, with the Chinese developers and that not understanding Aboriginal language, because I teach body language on there and maybe thought I was saying
Something nasty.
Yeah. But anyway, my allies came to the rescue and said, hey, what's going on here? And stood up for me. And it was wonderful. So through the help of people like at Mama Mia and P.T. Griffin, they fought to get me back on. And so I was reinstated.
Particularly, big shout out to Isabella Ross from Mamma Mia at the time.
Wonderful
We
group.
reinstated within 24 hours. And the other ally was a TikTok creator,
Peter Fairley.
and she's actually on our team now as our social coordinator. So that's what came from TikTok as well.
Yeah.
Wow. And how have you found the response? I mean, I know because I fell in love with you both, and I'm following you, and I'm learning as well because I'm a transplant. I'm from America originally. I live here now in Australia, and so I enjoy the videos just to learn, myself. One of the things that I find interesting is that you have a lot of well-meaning non-Indigenous people saying, "Is it okay if I do this or that?" Have you found that pretty much overwhelming? That's the response, is that they want to learn more, they want to incorporate more.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And it's great to see. And especially they're very interested in Indigenous languages. So that's great. And so the response has been overwhelmingly positive. Of course, there are always the naysayers and people who leave negative comments. But, even questions and comments like that is an invitation to have a dialogue with us. We have a no guilt, no blame, no shame philosophy. And that's to encourage us, to all of us, to have a dialogue with one another without, us going, tut, you can't say that. We encourage discussion of all sorts.
And I think it's like, so I realized in our bio that you read out, our team maybe made a bit of a mistake because it can be confusing because it says that I'm an Indigenous ally. And what that means is that I'm a non-Indigenous person that's an ally to First Nations people. But I realized when I heard that, it sounds like I could be an Indigenous person that's an ally.
Correct.
So the business, I founded the business before Aunty Munya joined,
Yes.
and it was really about, wanting and craving a connection from a young age with First Nations people, being really confused. I remember wandering about 4 or 5 years old, wandering through the bush in Sydney and just feeling such a deep connection with the old people or the spirits, but just thinking, why do our people, why do non-Indigenous people or the government and community basically ignore
Yeah.
First Nations people and not acknowledge them? And I just craved a connection. And it took me a long time, Christine, to get that connection. But I remember being really scared or frightened of saying or doing the wrong thing and not knowing how to go about it. So I guess and then fast forward many years, and Auntie Munya joined the team. And then we're like, we want to create a kinder, more inclusive Australia that really honours and learns and heals from this First Nation wisdom. How do we do that? And then we realised, well, it's really about teaching people like myself, non-Indigenous people, how to be confident and effective allies. And so that was kind of the genesis, the birth of it all. Yeah. So that's why, Auntie Munya, as you know, is just so endearing and open and generous with her knowledge. So we focus the journal is more focused on Ask Auntie. We sort of laugh and say Ask Auntie and a sidekick. And sidekick.
Well, and I didn't know much. I was oblivious of being an American. I know America has its own racism, roots in racism, and horrific acts from the government and from religions and all of that. And for those that are not familiar with the divide that has happened as well, and the racism that is here in Australia, and if you feel comfortable talking about it, either Auntie Munya or Carla, to give people an idea of how, especially how Aboriginal people have been treated over the last few hundred years, I guess.
Yeah, it's been quite atrocious. And like other First Nations peoples around the world, we've suffered the same fate. And so many of our mob relate very strongly to Native Americans
Yes.
and other Indigenous people, Maori people in Aotearoa, all around the world. And we share a kindredness with them because of that experience as colonized peoples. And so I became very much aware of racism from a very young age. And when I was 17, I went off to America to live as an exchange student up in Wisconsin. And that opened my eyes to the international world, and I'm forever indebted for that experience. But all the time in our teachings, in all that we teach and that, we try to create that broader awareness too of other people's struggles and to show the commonalities and similarities with faith and about us all becoming allies to each other.
Yeah, it's pretty stark, Christine. Like,
Mm.
so we have like other countries, as Auntie says, but the incredible effect of transgenerational trauma,
Yes.
colonization, the
Yeah.
stolen generation, and we have a significant gap in Australia, which between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people across all areas. Aboriginal men live 10 less years on average, and women 8 less years. That's on average. But if you were to compare a population in a community in the North Shore of Sydney with one in remote Australia, that difference can be up to 40 years
Wow.
in expectancy. And then the other statistics are horrendous, and some of them are actually getting worse. Double the rates of suicide, just the health statistics generally,
Yeah.
the economic disparity. And then, what was kind of really devastating in Australia was that, we had this important referendum, this choice last year to recognise First Nations people in the Constitution and to give them just a voice to Parliament, and that got voted down. What was it, by 60% of
Yeah.
Australians? So that's
And that brought up a lot of wounds, I'm
so
sure.
many.
Yeah, so many words. The other thing we found too is most Australians actually aren't aware of the real history of this country as well.
Right.
I'm very proud of my birth certificate because on it says born in the Derby Native Hospital. The native hospitals, we were segregated in Australian society. So there was a black hospital and a white hospital. So I was born in the black hospital in my town. And I grew up with that apartheid, if you like, from a very young age. And another thing people don't realize is that South Africa's apartheid laws were based on what was happening here in Australia. And that just really shocks everybody. It's like, hello, we were doing such a good job here that other countries copied us. And so people aren't aware of that history, being excluded like that, not seen. There was no acknowledgement of you as traditional owners. And that's why the welcome to countries and an acknowledgement of country is so important because it's saying to a First Nations person, I see you. And not only do I see you, but I respect you. And people who've not been excluded in life like that cannot understand or appreciate just how powerful a statement that is. People say to me, oh, but Auntie, isn't that tokenistic? And I go, no, you have no idea what it means to our mob. And for those of us who are old enough to remember what it was like, in Australia, growing up with that level of racism. Oh, yeah.
I can't imagine it. I mean, I can see the comparisons to what happened in America and what happened in America repeatedly
Yes.
with Native Americans, but also with the Black community and racism that was there. They had separate drinking fountains, separate pools,
Yes.
all of that.
Yes.
And the violence that was perpetrated,
That's
the
right.
ignorance that fueled the violence is something that still has not that has not been properly addressed and redressed. It's generational as well, like you said.
Yes.
But you said a couple times too. So for those, 'cause I love words. When you're talking about your mob, and so I'm going to ask you, who's your mob?
So my mob are the Bardi people. We're on the coast of in the Kimberley area, west coast of Australia, up in the north. We're saltwater people. We live by the sea. So what that means is we then have a lot of commonalities, a lot in common with other saltwater people from around the country. Usually that translates to us having similar saltwater dreamings. So for instance, you can't have someone in Alice Springs who has crocodile dreaming or shark dreaming because they're in the desert. So desert peoples relate to other desert peoples. Freshwater peoples relate to other freshwater peoples. So it gives you that sense of commonality and bonding and kinship around the country. Yeah.
And dreaming is a big part, isn't it?
It's a huge part. And, often people ask me, oh, Auntie, what is dream time? And in my book, just behind me, Journey into Dream Time, I wrote that to explain what Aboriginal spirituality is about, what dreaming is all about. And in that book, I say, I always take my lead from an elder who said, Gadiya people ask us all the time, what is dreaming? He says, it's hard to explain because dreaming is a really big thing for Aboriginal people. And it is. And so that book introduces people to that concept. What does that mean at a deep personal level? So
Oh, I love it.
yeah.
There's so much interest in that in the
Yeah.
TikTok channel, and what we find with our teachings, we run everything as like a yarning circle. And it's always that invitation from First Nations people that were extended last year with the referendum. We're extended all the time we're invited into First Nations worlds and dreaming and culture. And so what's been really popular on TikTok is, when people ask, well, as a non-Indigenous person, can I have a dreaming? Or I feel one video that went off was just a response that we made to another video, to another comment when someone said, oh,
Yes.
on connection to the willy wagtail. So Auntie and I just jumped down to surf and we just said, oh, let's enter this now.
Yes.
We just did this video talking about, even as a non-Indigenous person, how you can have these, in a culturally respectful way, but have these connections. And Auntie, what would you say about that for non-Indigenous people?
Well, I was taught that Aboriginal dreaming is for everybody. One of my spiritual teachers would say to me, Munya, he'd say, dreaming isn't just for Aboriginal people, it's for everybody. And so I continue in that tradition, sharing Aboriginal wisdom through Aboriginal dreaming with people so that they can learn about it and get in touch with their spiritual sides. We all have it. Every human being on this planet is spiritual, whether you realize that or not. And so it's getting people in touch with that. Because one of the things about dreaming, what it teaches us, is that we're all interrelated and interconnected. No one of us is separate from each other. We're all bonded in some way. We're all a family, if you like. And that's the wonderful gift that my culture has to offer the world. We take people through our Aboriginal kinship system and show them how everything and everybody is related to each other. So that to develop that deep sense of belonging. And, there was that author a couple of years ago during the COVID crisis who wrote about this century as being the loneliest century ever. And I would say to people, how can you be lonely? Your relatives are out there. Your ancestors are out there. We're guided through life. They walk beside us each step of the way. And that can be so empowering for the disenfranchised, for people who don't feel they belong, who feel perhaps that they're outsiders in the society.
Yeah, and it's such a not belonging is such a foreign concept. Which is like, it's a country is family and the stars are family and
Nature.
animals, everything, plants, everything has a kinship system and is related. And so when I talk to Auntie about feeling I don't belong to something,
I know. I
and
go,
she just looked
what
at me
are you
like,
talking
"No."
about? Women?
It's really interesting. And what we spent a lot of time on, Christine, is so we talked about that, the hard stuff, the gap and that kind of stuff, but we really focus a lot on what is it that we can learn from Indigenous wisdom and the strengths. And we can only grow and heal as a country when we turn to that wisdom. And what would this country be like if all of us saw, the earth, Mother Earth, as family and treated her like family? What difference would that make?
The world would be a better place, as well.
Yes.
Let's look at all the divisions, the divisiveness and the conflicts and,
Yeah.
based on religion and color and this and that. And it would be so, and I think like for myself, the time that I felt that really strong connection, and I've talked to a few people who've had NDEs, near-death experiences, is when I had that happen for a moment in time, although it did seem to stretch on forever. It was probably a second, but I felt connected to everything.
Wow.
to every bird, every rock, every drop of water. And it was the most beautiful feeling. I can never explain it. But after that, it just changed me at a different level. And I can imagine, walking around and experiencing the world, already feeling that connection all the time. That would be very cool.
Yeah.
I would like that.
That's an amazing thing. You often hear people like yourself that have had that experience, and our auntie has, are not afraid of death.
No.
But yeah, imagine for Indigenous people, that is the way of being. How amazing that would be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we actually teach that dream time is not in the past. It's very real. This is the dream time here in the modern world. Real world. And that's where truth and wisdom lie.
Well, if you don't mind, I would love to, for our listeners who are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, all the major podcast platforms, but also for the viewers who are watching on YouTube, is it all right to play one of your videos from your TikTok channel?
Yeah, most definitely.
Beautiful. Just to give people a little flavor. I think they already have a flavor of your wonderful giant hearts. But on this one, I just think it would be really fun. And this is a question that I think you get asked quite often. So let me see if I can just pull it up here. Give me just a moment.
Nanga Maladi, a lot of you are asking me if it's okay for you to call me auntie, given your Anglo-European. Yes, of course it is. It's a term of respect and endearment, and many of us Aboriginal people, we love to be recognised in that way. So by all means, you're welcome to call me auntie, of course. So thank you for the question.
I love that. That was just that was probably 30 seconds, if that. And that endeared me so much to you. Like, I could feel when I feel your spirit. It just comes right across through the ticket. And so do so many people that follow you on TikTok. What would you say is the most common question that you get asked?
Well, that's a pretty common question.
Yeah, there are questions about culture.
Yeah. Another is people ask me, they say, "Oh, Auntie, I've just found out I might have Indigenous heritage. How do I go about finding about my family?" And so that's a very common one.
Yeah. And then lots of questions about how non-Indigenous people can engage in a respectful and appropriate way in Indigenous culture. How can you partake in, you know, what if I feel a strong connection to country? And our auntie would respond, well, of course you have it. We all have that strong connection to country, and just fostering that, but also about cultural protocols like acknowledging country and how to do that in a Gemin's an Aboriginal English word for like not do it silly. So how can you do it in a way that's not Gemin and in a genuine way? Look,
people often ask me, "Oh, Auntie, how can I develop a deep spiritual connection to this land?" And so I say to people, "Are your family buried in this country?" And they look at me and go, "Yes." And I say, "Well, the bones of your loved ones are buried in this land. That is just sacred in itself. And we have deep respect for that as Aboriginal people. So you already have a deep connection to country."
Wow.
And so it's encouraging people to just get in touch with that feeling and know that they belong here and that we all have a responsibility to one another as well.
And questions about like buying black, like buying, how do I know if I'm buying Aboriginal art? Like that's a really
Can I
big
wear
question.
the Aboriginal t-shirt, the flag and that? And same thing, I said, yes, of course you can. Yeah. Things like that.
And it's that connection, isn't it? It's that connection to that we have lost in our digital age and being busy. Got to do this, got to do that. We've sort of lost that connection to the earth and to all that is really magical around. We're very cynical. We've become a sort of a cynical species, haven't we?
The non-Indigenous way of growing up is like our society is just putting productivity above everything else. And so one thing, the practice of deep listening is the incredible practice. But I've learned a lot from my auntie about about resting, and I'm still learning how to rest. how to stop, how to not to be busy, how not to
Take
do.
care of yourself.
But I think we're real products of our culture in that obsession with busyness and productivity.
Well, I'm just tickled just to have both of you on the show, and I will make sure that we have in the show notes the links to your TikTok channel and as well a link to the Evolve community, the website as well, so people can find out a bit more. And if they would like to support in some way, they can also go to that website and
Yeah, absolutely. Like we have so many ways for us to yarn with people, to learn together. Lots of books, lots of different programs. So we really love to keep the conversation going because the main thing Auntie and I, the reason we started the business, or have the business as it is that only 3% of our population in Australia is just over 3% is First Nations. And so it's 97% of us, 97% of us have an opportunity to step up, learn from and support First Nations people. So that's what we're all about. That's what those resources are all about.
Yeah.
and then people can also take the Ally Pledge as well.
Yes, you do.
Yes.
Yeah, that came about with the failure of the voice referendum. People were feeling deflated and people wanted us to not communicate with the world for a couple of weeks or so. And I didn't want to do that. I said, no, we've got to build upon the goodwill shown to us by at least 6 million Australians. Vote yes. And let's not forget that. And so the pledge was our idea of encouraging people to stay committed, to not give up the fight, to hang in there with us.
And keep showing up as allies.
And showing up as allies. And so, it asked people to pledge that, they listen to Indigenous voices, keep their hearts open and continue to support us. So, and that's been wonderful, hasn't it, Carla? There's been 4,000 people, more than 4,000 people
Wow.
signed up to take the pledge.
I think more than that now. But
Well, we'll get a few more. We'll put that link as well so people can take the pledge as well. Thank you again, both of you. My guests today have been Carla Rogers, who's part of the Ask an Ally part of the Ask Auntie, and also the wonderful Aunty Munya Andrews. Thank you so much. And I'll say too, this has been too deadly.
It's
It's been too deadly.
Yeah, we just like to say something in language to finish, but as Aunty Munya says, it's ultimately everything's all about Namanju,
which is love. So we say Galagona, thank you, and in Yidigal Gona, take care of yourselves and go well.
Oh, that's beautiful. Say that one more time and I'll pretend like I'm saying it.
In Yidigal Gona.
In Yidigal?
Yeah.
Yidigal, you got it.
In Yidigal? Gona.
Yeah, that's it.
Gona.
Oh, wow.
Gona, go well.
Yeah.
And Namanju?
Namanju?
Namanju.
Namanju. It sounds like that board game, Jumanji. Namanju. Okay.
Not to be mistaken, yes.
No. Thank you again so much. I really appreciate both of you.
You're welcome.
And thank you, wonderful listeners and also viewers on YouTube. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you got something joyous out of this conversation, if you would like to share this, and you should, please feel free to share this show on your social media with your friends, your family members. Really important to get this information out and also to support the wonderful Evolve communities. And again, all those links are going to be in the show notes, so you can check out the TikTok channel, like some of those videos, comment, because you might get a comment back as well. And if you'd like to check out our TikTok channel, we are, of course, the TikTok influencers. That's going to be on TikTok. And there is a link in the show notes to that as well. If you want more information about my business and my coaching, you can go to christineblasdale.com. All those links are going to be there. So until next time, as we say, make sure you keep scrolling, because you never know, you might stumble across an influencer you really should know about. Until next time, take care.